Last week, David Oinstein tweeted in an exclusive that Ruben Amorim has told Garnacho to get another club. Let's look at the situation. For this situation, Ruben Amorim and Garnacho. Firstly, let me put into context that Garnacho is only Due and Lamine Yamal who have more numbers than him in under 21 players in the top 5 leagues. In this situation, who should the club be backing? Or let me just take if it happens with other clubs, is he a player that has this kind of numbers, or a coach who has not proven himself? Who should the club be backing in this situation? Looking at everything, attitude, numbers, everything that you can put together.
I think that they say be careful the monster you create, because when it's time to tame that monster, you might struggle. When this same Garnacho came out to say that his idol is Cristiano Ronaldo and was rubbishing Messi, nobody tried to talk him down like, oh, this thing you're doing is not good. That attitude was very good at the time. And Garnacho's predicament kind of like remind me of myself, and I can relate to it. I have a lot of friends who think when I say the truth, they say my truth is very blunt. That's what people say, that I'm very blunt with the truth. When I say it and it's against somebody that is fighting them, I'm the greatest guy. When I say that same truth to them for something they've done wrong, I become the guy that is too harsh, that's too aggressive. And I think this is a situation that's happened. Manchester United have created a situation whereby this type of thing should happen. First off, blaming one player for the wrong of a team is not good. And I've seen a lot of Nigerians also say, oh, good for Garnacho, he's useless, he's useless. And I asked a guy the other day on Twitter, I said, if this was Ademola Lookman, if this was Osimhen, if this was Victor Boniface, if this was Terry Murphy, Taiwo Awoniyi, or a Nigerian player, would you find this funny? Because all of a sudden you will start talking about racism. You start talking about, but he's a white player, he's Argentine. We can't have that kind of conversation. Garnacho is not the reason why Manchester United have a bad season. Garnacho is not the reason why. I mean, this is a player that didn't come into the game pretty early, and the coach said that it was because he didn't do too well in the semi-finals. He was missing all the chances. So now you didn't win the game. You don't come out and say this guy shouldn't be. Yeah, it was very strange. But the question is, who would the management back? The way I've lived a life, I've worked in places where a manager, a programs manager, stole money meant for staff, and staff were complaining. And there's a sentence he used that nobody will back you guys over a manager. The manager is always the one that they will back. And I remember the owner of the company called a meeting and he said, well, the people that their money were eating didn't play office politics properly, that the management will always side with the golden boy, the manager. So sometimes when you look at football, most times coaches always win. Mason Greenwood suffered this type of situation to manage. When the club set up an investigation panel, they investigated and find him not guilty of anything, but still they banished him from the club. And the woman in the center of this whole drama have given birth to the player and the woman, they are still together, but Manchester United cut their nose to spite their face. And in this case, I think it is foolishness. Instead of looking at what is wrong with the whole team now, they want to use the Garnacho situation as a scapegoat. Everybody is played according to how they are asked to play. We've talked about how coaches can change a team. We saw what Ranieri did with Roma. Ruben Amorim, I wouldn't say he's a bad coach, but you can be. I'm a great driver. Mm-hmm. I know how to drive. But if you give me a Formula 1 car, I would wreck it. I'll kill myself. I'll be terrible because that car is different. If you give me a 42-wheeler, a truck, a Dangote truck to drive, I will wreck it and I might kill myself. Does that mean I'm a bad driver? No. Those vehicles are above my knowledge and my pay grade and my ability. And that's exactly what I see with Ruben Amorim. And instead of him being the guy to take the blame, he's not look for the weakest link to put the blame on. So Alex Ferguson wouldn't have done this. Arsene Wenger wouldn't have done this. I think some great coaches wouldn't have done this. What he's done has not set himself for a failure. One, some players will be looking. I don't want to go to a club where the coach, the day they lose, they look for players to blame. They don't take responsibility. That's one. Other players in the team who are friends with Garnacho be saying, this is what this coach does. If you can do this to my friend, you can do this to me. Then they will start the season again with a whole lot of dressing room unrest, people who don't like him. And hypothetically, you let Garnacho go and the player that is coming is from Portugal, they will say, oh, you set up Garnacho so that you bring in your brother. Yeah, People think that these things don't happen in football. It happens. Everybody think they calculate it, and then that puts the coach and the club again in another circle. Man United cannot afford to. It's not like they are a club that if it happens, the world will not end anyway. But they cannot afford to go through another merry-go-round of fighting for 17. They're not playing in Europe next season. They don't have any European competition to play. So they have the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the league title. Man United cannot afford to have a dressing room that is not settled to the point where they will now start struggling for crumbs like ETH, Eric Ten Hag did when he won the FA Cup, and it seems like he had done the impossible even in the midst of all the crises that we're in. I think that is a wrong way to go, but for who they will support, I think the club will end up supporting
But I still want to, still on this topic, have you not looked at the fact that for Man United, there was an ETH Jadon Sancho problem? If you go back to maybe Jose Mourinho to, like, this thing has been coming with, there's always a player, a coach, there's always a player and coach situation. Is there not something wrong with how the institution have probably given the player so much power?
It's not much of players' power. It's much of, I like the word you use, the institution. It's much of the organizational structure of the institution. The Nigerian famous writer who wrote a book entitled "It Things Fall Apart," and they say things are falling apart and the centers cannot hold. If you do comparison with Real Madrid, this type of situation, the president Florentino Perez would step on it and take charge and harmonize situation. When the BBC was reigning supreme, all the players were not friends. That some things that were not going well. Ronaldo went and sold his image, right, 40% of his image, right, to a rival company, a company that is owned by the owner of Valencia. It was a problem, but he still played a couple of seasons with Real Madrid, even in the midst of all those problems. My take here is the fact that Man United have lost its focus for a very long time, and because of that, all sorts in pidgin English they will say, "Na fence way for, na make good waka enter compound." You know, so the fence that holds this club has fallen since Alex Ferguson left. Man United have really not had that kind of organizational structure. Who the club look up to? Ineos, I mean, Sir Ratcliffe might be doing all this drama. People look at him like this is the kind of club chairman or club leader that people look at and laugh at, because majority of the things that he's doing, even though he's a shareholder, you know that this guy doesn't have more than 20% share, right? Yeah. So even though he's in charge of football business, he kind of like come across as a typical eye service manager, boss in the company who is doing more than who is trying to exert power, more power than he actually has. So he's a toothless bulldog whose back is worse than his bite, and he's also not done well by cutting, you know, a lot of jobs, touching people that affect the club and all that. And then there is no real structural improvements since he came in. The club is still the same. They're still leaking roof. We've heard noise of Wembley of the North, 100,000 capacity stadium. When would that start? We don't know. In the footballing phase, there is a whole lot that's not going on well. From next season, for instance, Man United will be paying Adidas for wearing their jersey when in the reverse is the case. So there's so many things to look at. But to be very honest, the decay at Man United is at grandiose proportion right now.
You are listening to Elegbete TV Radio.